Zach is back. It's the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
5:19. Welcome back in, everybody. It's the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. Gary Cohen's going to be joining us in a few moments. He's actually on the treadmill right now, but he'll be joining us in a few minutes because fans can tune in to SNY tomorrow to see Gary Cohen starting at 6 o'clock for 2 hours of exclusive pregame coverage of Mets and Giants live from Citi Field. Then immediately following the final out, return to SNY for immediate reactions with Mets post-game coverage. So you will have the New York Mets in the playoffs tomorrow against the San Francisco Giants. That is Madison Bumgarner and Noah Syndergaard. We're waiting on Gary Cohen to join us on the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. It's amazing the Mets are at this point because I really thought when the New York Metropolitans were in August not able to win back-to-back games, I thought it was over for the New York Mets, but no other team was able to pull away, and they were resilient all year long, and they were able to get the job done, and now they have a home game for the postseason. But once again, fans can tune in to SNY tomorrow to see Gary Cohen starting at 6 o'clock for 2 hours of exclusive pregame coverage of Mets and Giants live from Citi Field. Then immediately following the final out, return to SNY for immediate reactions with Mets postgame. And Gary Cohen, the Mets play-by-play voice, is kind enough to join us right now. Gary, appreciate a few minutes, and how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Zach. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How was the run on the treadmill? Good?
Yeah, it was just terrific. A lot of sweat.
I'll tell you this, though. I do actually feel bad for you, and you have a great job. We all know that. You're one of the best in the business. But I always feel for the TV broadcasters that the playoffs come and you guys don't get to do your job.
Well, it's what we sign up for. You know, it certainly is the greatest downside of TV versus radio, the way baseball is structured. But, you know, we're fortunate enough to be there all season, and now we'll let the networks take care of their job and let Howie and Josh do their job on the radio, and we'll settle into the pre and post, and it'll be nice to be a part of it.
This run, unbelievable for the New York Mets. I was doing a show to Buffalo Wild Wings in August. I thought they were done. I thought they should have made a move at the managing position. I know no team pulled away in that NL wild card, but the Mets were brilliant down the stretch. Got to give a lot of credit, Gary, to Terry Collins for handling all these injuries. There were a lot of them this year. And also Sandy Alderson for plugging in the right pieces, whether it was a James Loney or Jose Reyes, bringing those two guys to New York. It's an impressive job by Terry and Sandy.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think, honestly, you know, fans tend to get caught up in the minutia of the moves that a manager makes during the game. But honestly, watching the game and being around a team for as many years as I have, that's about 3% of the job. The other 97% of the manager's job is to deal with the media, keep his team focused in the right direction, and get them to play hard every day. And whether the Mets have had losing seasons or winning seasons, Terry Collins has done that brilliantly from the day he arrived. As for Sandy, they, you know, it's interesting. The biggest move that they made for Jay Bruce wound up not paying any dividends for the vast majority of the time that he was here. But he did kick it into gear the last week to 10 days, and that certainly was helpful. But the smaller moves have almost uniformly paid off. I mean, think about it. You know, James Loney was cut by the Rays at the end of spring training. He was playing in AAA with San Diego. Nobody wanted him, and he filled an enormous role for the Mets when Duda went down. Rene Rivera was cut loose by the Rays right before opening day, and the Mets signed him, sent him for the minors, and he's proved to be an enormous resource for them. Jose Reyes was a very questionable signing because of his baggage, and nobody really knew whether he could play at a high level anymore. And he's been a model citizen and has played wonderfully. So, and they've gotten fortunate. I mean, nobody expected Robert Gazelman and Seth Lugo to come up from the minor leagues and do what they've done, but it's been a huge collection of disparate parts that they put together, and it's really been fascinating to watch.
But that's what I noticed being in the clubhouse, because there's a bevy of names that have different backgrounds. All those players, when they clinched on Saturday, they talked about even Jay Bruce when he was going through that slump and was sat down for a few games. He talked about how the communication was so clear with Terry Collins and how he just connects so greatly with those players. That's why I give credit, and a lot of credit, to Terry Collins. Yeah,
and Bruce is an interesting case because, you know, Terry pinch hit for him in a big spot, and, you know, a player of that caliber is not accustomed to that. He sat him down for 3-4 days in a row. Player of that caliber is not accustomed to that. But the point is that Terry was able to communicate with Bruce and spin it in a positive way so that when Bruce did get back in the lineup, he was able to be productive. And sometimes, those moves can backfire on you, and you might lose a player. But that's what makes Terry so special, is that he is able to communicate with his players, keep them pointed in the right direction. And don't forget also that, the Mets lost a lot of veteran leadership in their clubhouse this year. Michael Kadire was a big piece of that last year, and David Wright going down early in the season wasn't always there this year to help with that. So a lot of what normally Terry would get from his veteran leaders, he had to do more by himself this year.
So who plays at first base tomorrow night? I know he made the decision. He won't reveal it. Who do you think goes at first base?
I think it's James Loney, and I think that they gave due consideration to all three choices. Eric Campbell, because he has had some big at-bats against left-handed pitching late in the season. But I think that when push comes to shove, it was going to come down to Duda or Loney. And Duda's had so few at-bats against lefties since coming back that I think Loney wound up being the default.
Gary Cohen with us, the TV play-by-play man for the Mets on SNY. I watch Gary, Keith, and Ron all year long during the season on SNY, and you can watch Gary tomorrow starting at 6 o'clock, and then after the game for hopefully a Mets celebratory post-game as the Mets go up against someone that has been shutting down a lot of people in the postseason for a very long time in Madison Bumgarner. I guess the approach on Bumgarner is just swing early and be aggressive against Madison Bumgarner.
Well, the Mets have faced him a lot, and he's had 2 starts against them this year. He was wonderful the first time he faced them back in early May, but he was not great when the Mets faced him in August. The irony is that the guy who had the biggest hit against him, another one of Sandy Alderson's below-the-radar pickups, Justin Ruggiano, hit a grand slam against Bumgarner in that game. Of course, he only played a couple of weeks for the Mets because he got hurt very early in his tenure. But, I don't think there's any master game plan. Yeah, Bumgarner tends to be aggressive, doesn't walk people, but he also throws his slider first pitch 31% of the time. So you can't get caught up in, looking to attack a first pitch fastball because there's a really good chance you're not going to get one.
And really, the first 3 batters for the Mets, Reyes, Cabrera, and Cespedes, that's been the difference for this team down the stretch. When those 3 players are heating up, the Mets are winning a lot of games. You need a good game out of all 3 of those guys at the top of that order coming up tomorrow night.
Well, I think even more so because you're facing a lefty. I mean, Curtis Granderson has been wonderful for the last month of the season after a really weird season for him. And, of course, Bruce has been red hot. But I don't know how much you can count on your lefties carrying your offense when you're facing Bumgarner. But Reyes and Cabrera have been much higher average hitters from the right side. In fact, I read today that even though he's only had, I think, 50 at-bats against lefties, Reyes' slugging percentage is as high as any part-time player in the league, so against lefties. So between he and Cabrera and then Cespedes sitting third, you got 3 guys who should give you your best opportunity to mount some offense against Bumgarner. Not to discount that other guys might. You got P.J. Rivera breaking up the lefties in the middle of the order, and he's been enormous for the Mets coming down the stretch of the season too. But I would agree with the concept that the Mets need to get big games out of those top 3 if they're going to win.
There was no question there was some backlash bringing back Jose Reyes for the misogynistic things that happened off the field, but let's focus what happened on the field as we get ready for a postseason game tomorrow night. How about Jose Reyes getting back to the postseason? It's been a long time for him, and I don't think he would have drew it up this way coming back to New York.
Well, I think that he's thrilled to be back in New York. I think it's probably one of the reasons he's playing as well as he is. He's always been more comfortable here than he has been anywhere else. It was definitely a stretch to sign him, but
no question.
This was a team that was really devoid of team speed, and he gave them that. He's given them a nice presence at the top of the batting order, which Granderson had been filling that role in kind of a different way than Reyes presents. And he's played third base better than I think anybody expected him to. He still has his warts there, plays a little too deep. I think the Giants may well try to bunt on him because he is a little vulnerable there. But overall, you have to be really happy with what Reyes has given them.
Yeah, I talked to him on Saturday, and he said even he was surprised with the way he's played defense at third base. You know, defense is going to be a big component to this game, especially because a lot of people with Syndergaard and Bumgarner expect it to be low scoring. Rivera and Thor, how do they deal with the base runners? Because I expect when the Giants get people on, they're going to be running.
Well, if you remember, in Syndergaard's 2 starts against the Giants this year, the first time they ran wild against them, they had 4 stolen bases without being caught, the only time the Giants have done that all year. But the second time around, they were 0 for 2. And I think the introduction of Rivera has helped. He certainly has got the best throwing mechanics and the strongest arm of the 3 Met catchers. And I think he works well with Syndergaard, just in terms of their compatibility. But I also think that Noah has worked on his ability to hold runners. I think he's altered his hold times. He's been a little quicker at the plate than he was. He's still not, he's not Ron Darling in his prime. But I think he does a better job now, and I think it's less a case now where they can just run wild on him as they might have earlier. And to me, the guy that you have to keep off base is Denard Span, and if you do that, you got a much better chance of controlling the running game.
Everyone talks about the experience with Bumgarner because of how dominant he's been and winning 3 World Series, coming out of the pen, winning that big World Series last time around when the Giants were in the playoffs. But I take a look at Noah Syndergaard's experience. I know it was only last year, but he was very impressive last year in the postseason. How much does that experience help Thor this go-around in the game tomorrow night?
Oh, it's immeasurable. I mean, whether it was, coming out of the bullpen in Game 5 against the Dodgers and blowing them away, whether it was pitching Game 3 of the World Series, with the Mets in a hole. I think that this is a kid who is fearless. He is the dominant force on that staff, and I think he takes the responsibility very seriously. He knows that, among all the young guns the Mets figured to get to this point with, he's the last guy left standing. It's he and the 43-year-old guy that was supposed to be in the bullpen this time of year. So I think he understands the responsibility on his shoulders, and honestly, I think he relishes it. And the way he handled himself in Game 3 of the World Series last year certainly speaks volumes. Now, how it plays out tomorrow night, you never know. A break here and there, a misplay, somebody hangs a slider and somebody hits a home run. These games don't always go according to script, but it's really important for the Mets not to fall behind early, because that's what happened to the Pirates the last time they ran into Bumgarner in the wild card game 2 years ago. And once he gets the lead, he's hard to beat.
Talking about the script, everyone is predicting a low-scoring game, so maybe you do have a high-scoring affair. I think that would be good news for the Mets. But if it is a low-scoring affair, you have to believe that Curtis Granderson plays a factor in that, and maybe he gets Bumgarner to make a mistake and he hits a solo home run, because we've seen a lot of that out of Grandy in the second half of the season. He's such a good guy, tremendous personality, but how did he change things around and really turn it around in the second half of the season?
Yeah, it's a little hard to explain, but if there's anybody who stays with the mantra of do your work the same way every day and eventually the results are going to come, it's Granderson. He speaks that line, and he plays that line. Really, when you look up and down the Mets lineup, he's been the one constant all year, the one guy who didn't land on the disabled list, and it was a pretty frightful first few months for Curtis. Last year he slumped early in the season, but at least he was getting on base via the walk. This year the home runs came at a pretty steady pace. The on-base percentage was down, and for a large piece of the season, he was not a reliable piece. But not only has he played better since sliding into that cleanup role, hitting behind Cespedes, but he's also played a decent center field, which I think a lot of people were skeptical whether he could. And, when Juan Lagares went down and Cespedes' leg wouldn't let him play center field, the Mets only had bad options, whether it was playing Conforto or giving Diaz more playing time or moving Curtis over there. And I think that he has acquitted himself far better than anybody expected him to in taking over that role.
Now, before we let you run, not Mets related, but it definitely is related to your craft and our craft as a business in radio. That's the legendary Vin Scully, as he is retired and is not doing the playoffs this year. You got a chance to interview Vin this year, watched it on SNY, and even watched the rerun this year during a Mets rain delay. Just your thoughts on the tremendous career that no one will be able to replicate ever of one Vin Scully.
Well, I think what you just said is exactly right. I mean, he set an unattainable standard and really elevated the respect paid to our craft by the way that he performed it. He's in many ways he's a reminder of a bygone era. He picked up the mantle from Red Barber, who believed in speaking directly to the listener and having a one-man broadcast, which, Scully's TV broadcast will be the last one-man broadcast ever, I would assume. But his level of education and erudition and the sound of his voice and his friendliness all come through on the air. But when you meet him in person, that's where you really understand just how genuine a person he is. And it was always a pleasure to be in his company. He always treated me with the utmost of respect, even when I was a first-year broadcaster in the major leagues, treated me like a valued colleague. And really that's the value of the man, is that he treated everybody the right way, treated everyone like they were the most important person in the room. And he will be greatly missed by the millions and millions of people who he gave pleasure through the airwaves, but even more so by the people who knew him.
Once again, you can tune in tomorrow night, SNY, to see Gary Cohen. Pregame coverage at 6, and then after the game, hopefully there is a champagne celebration for the Mets, and you could be watching it all on SNY. Gary Cohen, you're one of the best in the business. I appreciate the time today.
Thanks for having me, Zach.
Thanks so much. There is Gary Cohen joining us on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. Okay, let's go out to the phone lines right now, 609-919-9200. Hello, you're on the air. Welcome to the Zach Gelb Show.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, who is this?
My name is Eric Laughlin.
Oh, how about that? What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about the Giants.
Okay, go ahead. Fire away.
I'm a big Met fan also, but, I really rather focus on what's Odell thinking.
Well, I don't think Odell is very smart right now, and he's letting his emotions get the best out of him, and it's not good. And it's producing poor play on the field, and you saw it in the Redskins game a lot, where in the Redskins game, you had Weston Richburg retaliate on Josh Norman. They need to find a way to control him. Tom Coughlin is an admirable person, tremendous coach, to me a Hall of Fame coach. He couldn't control Odell Beckham. Now Ben McAdoo isn't either to do it as well. So just maybe, that conversation with Jerry Reese last night and hearing what Eli Manning had to say and Victor Cruz saying no comment will wake Odell up.
I agree. And let's go Mets.
There we go. Come on. Give me one more time a bigger Let's Go Mets chant. We're getting ready for tomorrow night. One more time. Give it to me.
Let's go Mets.
There we go. Da-na-na-na-na-na. Let's go. Da-na-na-na-na-na. Mets. Do it. Back to that 86. That was before I was even born, but I love that video. This is the Zach Gelb Show, 609-919-9200. Fun to talk to Gary Cohen. Tomorrow, I just have a feeling, and on paper, everything says, Zach, go with the experience. Zach, go with the San Francisco Giants. Well, the Mets show you this year on paper, it means nothing. Because we thought it would be Noah Syndergaard, along with Matt Harvey, Jacob deGrom, Steven Matz. But now it's just Syndergaard and Bartolo all by themselves because all those players have got injured. Also, Neil Walker getting injured, Travis d'Arnaud being horrendous. So, with the Mets, why not us? Why can't the Mets win tomorrow night and do the impossible and defeat Madison Bumgarner? This is the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more sports talk to wrap up the show after these short messages.